Good morning. Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sank Empowered Teams podcast. Today, we've got something new for us to talk about our new partnership with Eden Smith. So I'd like to say hello from Toby and hello from the Eden Smith team, who would like to introduce themselves.
I'm Jez, CEO and one of the co-founders of Eden Smith. Nice to be on the call this morning with you, Toby and Phil. Looking forward to the discussion.
Hi, I'm Nick, and I lead our data consultancy and group data for Eden Smith, so supporting our customers in data transformation. It's really good to be with you and talk about the partnership.
Excellent. And my stalwart colleague.
Morning all, Phil. Hi, welcome again.
Thank you. So the subject of today's call or today's podcast is why data literacy and soft skills, and this is the raison d'etre, the principle that's brought us together into this partnership. We're very excited about this. We have some great plans leading up to Business Data London. And I think that what I'd like to do is just to start kicking this off with Phil, and the reason for that is because Phil is the reason that it's actually taken place, and for you to open up, Phil, why you brought us together, what you saw the value of Sunk and Eden Smith.
Yeah, so I like a nice easy challenge at the beginning. Thanks, Toby.
Correct, mate.
I mean, the main reason is, and it's probably because I'm going to now say I'm not sure I quite like the title of the podcast, even though I suggested what the title of the podcast was. Because actually, when you look, what frustrated me as a CDO was looking at within businesses and organisations that it was an either or. You kind of have people that did data and technology and people that did other stuff, yeah. And often it wasn't seen that there was a lot of training around kind of the soft skills and the managerial skills and the interpersonal skills and team development skills from the other bits of the business, less so and less focused within data and IT. And actually, when I looked at it, data literacy, as we all know, and we've talked about in the past, is everyone's responsibility across the organization. I would argue that data literacy is a modern business skill. And actually what you'll find increasingly is that when you are looking for that kind of blueprint of the skills that people have in the modern workplace, understanding data, how to use data, how to analyze, interpret, visualize, and how to be familiar with technology is and should be a foundational skill. What the gameplay does, it really focuses on the Sunk gameplay, focuses down on those kind of the emotional intelligence, soft skills, the team building skills. But also, it was quite obvious to me when we were looking at it, it was also about information. How do you impart information? How do you share information? How do you visualize information? So the two things really blended well together. From my experience with working in Eden Smith, what they're fantastic at is getting those people with that combination, and it's working with the right kind of partners that have the same ethos as us around. It is not just that people talk about the tech skills and the kind of the hard technology skills and data skills and the softer skills. I'm not sure that soft is the right phrase for those because they're of equal weight and equal importance. And I think that's where, when we get to Big Data London, it's a real opportunity for us to kind of explore that as a wider theme. And I think this is the way that the industry will be going. Creative problem solving and all those sorts of things will be the future of how you use data. And importantly for that is how teams work together to solve problems. I don't know if everyone else, I don't know if Jez and Nick agree with what I've said, or that echoes what you're familiar.
I totally agree with you because we've been like just constantly building capability for 7 years now in data, and all of the requirements that we get for all of the functions and all of the roles that support data transformation, there's always a huge heavy requirement for softer skills. And the other thing I think that we've seen is where everyone has, or many businesses have gone and tried to build capability around BI or around, I don't know, engineering or architecture, etc. It's always come back to the fact that the whole business is lacking in data literacy, right? So it doesn't matter what you do, they're not going to be able to consume, therefore add any value to that going forward. So I think we've now come back a step. And we really need to concentrate on this improving data literacy and soft skills, and people are very bored with old methods of training, and it's not really I don't think it's adopted as quickly as what we need in the modern market. And Nick will have a big view on that, but that's why I think this partnership is perfect, because for our business and in the group, we've always been looking to be very innovative. We've always looked for different ways that we can utilize capability and actually serve and provide thought leadership to the whole community to help it accelerate how successful it is in the transformation. So this is something new, it's something good, it's definitely a brilliant product, and it's brilliant for us as well, because I think we'll really be able to help the market more. So I totally agree with everything you said, Phil. I don't know about you, Nick.
Yeah, I think, look, it's true that no matter how successful your data team are, if the business aren't ready or don't have the basic foundations of data skills, then whatever data products you produce are not necessarily going to be adopted, not necessarily going to be used, or processes won't be followed. So, and actually, I think a lot of success and innovation from data and where you get data value is from the business. It's from business objectives, it's from business understanding and SME bit. So unless you can bring the general business users along on that data journey and help them collaborate and work with any data team you'd have, whether that's centralized or embedded, you won't get as much value out of your data than you would just bringing in, a completely isolated data team that works on their own priorities. So, I mean, I don't think it's worth us remembering that we all learned some of this stuff at school, right? We all learned how to create a bar chart, how to read a bar chart. But I think it's been so long, we've been so focused on other business skills and our technical skills that we've perhaps not thought about how does that apply to our world today. So I think it's just like I said, a refocusing of what we train and how we train in an organization in order to make sure that people communicate better across different functionalities.
I had the pleasure of listening and witnessing Nick in action on Thursday when he was presenting back some analytical work that he was doing for a client. It was really interesting for me to be an observer, because Nick had done a lot of in-depth heavy lifting of the analytical work, but correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but was having to provide what did all of this mean in context. So it was the lower level of how do you helping that senior team understand what Nick had identified within their organization, and enabling them, how do they put that into context? Things like understanding that is your sample that you've used of a significant size to warrant you making big decisions for your business based on that. So it's like understanding that, if you've got a population of 3,000 but only 100 people fill your form in, is that informed enough for you to make a really significant change in direction for your business, for instance? It's that level of people really starting to understand and unpick some of those issues. And for me, it's about the confidence to be able to challenge and ask those questions. I think often people will take the information, and I think they're a bit nervous about, I don't really understand what that bloody pie chart is telling me, but it kind of seems to say the right thing. Whereas actually saying, can you tell me again what that pie chart was? Because I do also think that it's those that are presenting analytical information back and visualizing have a duty to make it as clear and as transparent and easy to understand as they possibly can. And I think sometimes that is missing, and equally the audience needs to be informed about asking the right questions.
So what you just said there feels quite interesting, because I mean, often we get that point where we're trying to explain the analysis to the business users, but when you do get a really kind of let's use the term, I know we don't like the word literacy, but data literate individual in the business, you actually get a lot back in order of pushing that analytics forward. So, you know, I've had scenarios where someone's actually perhaps, even though it's there's an anomaly and they've picked it out in the data, or they've seen something on the chart that they go, well, 1 minute, I know we're talking about this over here, but what about B over there? Like, I've just seen that and that's really interesting to me because it follows this path. Or there might be a bit of insight that we as a data team or as a consultancy function might not have thought was of high importance. But that one little bit of data that they see, they suddenly go, oh, we were just talking the other week about a strategy that is working on A, B, and C. You've just brought out some data that kind of supports or works towards that strategy or gives some insight on that strategy. Could we investigate that further? So I think when we talk about what data literacy skills are, there is that kind of curiosity, awareness, and kind of questioning back. But also that kind of storytelling piece in there I think is really big.
I think, Nick, as well, like one of the things Phil just mentioned about, you know, if there's 1,000 people in your business and only 100 of them complete the survey, then obviously, are you going to make a big decision on that? Well, of course, it would be a bit ludicrous to do that because you wouldn't be getting a true reflection of what the actual output was. However, the more data literate and the more aware of the importance of data people become, that 100 turns into 500 people that actually want to complete the survey. They want to go through the training. And then the other thing really inspires me, that out of the 100, let's say 25% of them are very curious people. The moment that you start getting more people actually really, really interested in it, and then you start unlocking the other 25% of the other 100 that are really curious. And like you've just said, all of a sudden there's an explosion of, wow, all of these ideas are coming out from across the group and they're seeing different things in the data and they're questioning it more. And then you get a whole new perspective from where your business is at and what's possible, I think. So it's actually like, I don't think people really understand the impact that improving data literacy can really have in your business.
But there's a point that you're drawing out there that all three of you bring, is the concept of engagement. You know, why am I excited and why are we excited as a business? Because we suddenly see really data literacy, for whatever good or bad in the word there, Phil, is the yin and yang with soft skills. All right. And both of them may be inadequate necessarily in describing what it is they do, but they both together. A lot of the time when you're discussing how people are using the data that's in front of them, you're saying, have they got the confidence? Have they got curiosity? Are they interested in what they're doing? Well, these are soft skills. Right? You don't learn these skills by passing an exam. They're the engagement that we talk about. So when we talk about the relationship between soft skills and data literacy, one of the things that we see is, which sometimes I think you have to use data literacy with data fluency. Fluency gives a sense of direction or of growth. You know, can you be a white belt in data literacy and a black belt? And does the white belt to black belt mean you're only good at interpreting data? Or does white belt to black belt mean that you are good in a team? Getting the team to solve problems, getting the team to think creatively, getting the team to do that. And in and around that, have you got leadership skills built with it? Because if you're going to move from 100 people completing a form to 500, you've got to give them a reason. And that reason has to be built around some form of leadership and interest and development that does that. So there's that emphasis on developing skill as against just that, which means then, just to finish off the point, is how often do you train? If you think you're going to solve this in a 2-day training course and you're just going to sheep get them through, well, you're going to get a very, very limited effect. You know.
You said something interesting there, Toby, and I was reflecting on my data journey into the data world with our podcast with Jez about building sustainable data teams. And he asked about one of the biggest challenges. And I think that we often feel that experience is gained over time. And I don't think it is. I think experience is gained from actually taking part, right? And I use a chess example. I say I could play chess once a week, every week. Or I could play 100 games in 2 or 3 days, whatever it may be. It's about the experiences and the environments you run through and what you learn from those. So I think hard skills, you know, like your technical skills, they can be taught through a number of programs that tell you how to do A, B, and C, and you could do them over a period of time and gain a certain level of experience. But I think these soft skills need to be practiced more regularly. But I think we're all afraid sometimes of practicing them in a live business environment. You know, if I ask the question about some data, if we've got a major deadline and I suddenly throw out there whether this data is actually, you know, can we scrutinize it more? What control methods it's gone through? Can we document the whole process with not all the tick boxes are ticks, as it were? What impact am I going to have on my own personal career, on the business impact, and all these other people in the room that apparently are agreeing with this data point and this thing, even though I'm the only one sat there thinking it might be wrong?
So we have so what you just talked about is groupthink.
Yeah.
All right. So in groupthink, and that's one of the you know, that's like, you know, that's a suicide note for a business, that. All right. And time again, we come across this what's known in our business, right, as the technical world, is skilled incompetence, learned incapacity. All right. And I'm starting to use technical terms in the soft skills word. This learned incapacity comes and developed in teams, so they learn not to ask questions that rock the boat, because it's career suicide, all right? Or it upsets people because people are not used to what we call constructive conflict, all right? And constructive conflict is creative. Means that you have to change the norms and the values of how the team functions. And the best way, the easiest way, we think, to get teams to make this step is to think of a sports team, right? Your objective, and to really take on board the best of being a sports team. To really, I was joking before we came on board about, you know, copy, Control C, Control V. Here in what is great about a basketball team, right? What is the best basketball team in the world, and what are their values? How do they train? How do they think about winning? And we use this a lot to help business teams rethink their norms and values, their rules, because the problematic you just described is very pertinent, is very strong, and really kills business performance. But if you can turn it round, if you can give people the confidence to ask that question, and that it's asked within a safe environment, then business results go through, because they learn, they get better, they get excited, they get engaged.
Sorry, Phil, go on.
Oh, well, I was just going. So I wanted to sort of bring it back a little, if I could, just to something that Nick said, because I completely agree with one of the comments around the hard skills and the soft skills. And when being in the recruitment business, and I've recruited hundreds of people over my time, and often what you get is the only way you can really, well, the challenge that I always found is I want the people that are curious. But when I'm looking at CVs, I'm always looking at what degree level have they got, what experience have they got, where have they worked before? Yeah, they're the kind of tick in the box bits that I've got. But actually, from your CV, actually knowing that person can, they've got the knowledge, can they apply that within my business? Yeah? Can they actually do that? Is how do you? That's what I'm teasing out. Does that make sense? I have to tease that out when I get to the interview. And it's a bit like Nick said, was that, and I often in conflict with other people in my organisations that I work with, whereas I'm saying I can teach people the hard skills. Yeah, they can do a course in doing that. The soft skills is a lot more complex. So I'm recruiting people that I think I can work with that person. That person can work in my team. They've got the curiosity that I like. They're not just they're going to challenge me. You know, they're not just going to sit there and accept me as the boss and just say, well, I'm just going to do whatever he says, you know, and all of those sorts of things. That's what I'm looking for when am I making sense? But actually that's really much harder to kind of gauge and find out.
Yeah, you are, Phil. I'm glad you brought it back to this point, because I'll be kind of sitting here, you know, like when you really just want to say something and you're kind of bubbling, and it was going back to, so what you've said is absolutely correct, and what Nick said is correct, and what Toby said I found quite interesting. He talked about white belts and black belts and certain skills, right? So my view on all of that stuff is that absolutely right, Phil, you can teach some of the what we call harder skills stuff. You can also teach people how to become a leader. Whether they become a good leader or a bad leader is dependent on their soft skills. Where I would challenge all of this, and this is where I feel like frequent training obviously is the best way to do stuff, but what we have to really be aware of is that one person's curiosity and another person's curiosity are both as valuable in their own right. Now, what you can't get your head around, or it's really hard to get your head around, is how do you measure whether they've got better or worse? Something like that, because, or pick out certain things and say, well, Nick's, but it doesn't mean I'm a level 9 and he's a 5. And that's not the only place where you look at that, right? It's the same in storytelling. Storytelling is now a recognized skill. And what we're trying to do here is get people to be better at storytelling. But what you forget is how it's consumed, because your storytelling might be great for that audience, not so much for this one. And mine might be good for this one and not so much that one. And what you have to really try and get under the hood of is, how do you measure improvement in those areas? And I think it has to be done across a lot of different mediums.
So the way that we would pick on that, and because that is a really great question, all right? Because you can measure hard skills, it's by an exam, and everybody's comfortable with that, and it's, you know,
it's the progress. It's the progress that you got to really get your head around. How do you measure?
So in our business, what we created is a scorecard, all right? And the scorecard really is something that we have as a generic scorecard that allows us to map what we call behavioral variables. All right, what do we mean by behavioral variables? The first thing that generally that happens in teamwork that is a fail is nobody sets goals in a meeting. So in our simulation, when we put teams through, the first thing that we're looking at is, how does the team start to function together? Does it set goals? Does it not just have overall goals, but does it have mini project goals? Does it go through that? How does it collaborate? By what means does it collaborate? Does it use processes and techniques and formats? Does it use tools like, for example, Google Slides, etc.? Collaborative tools to be able to work with. How does it solve problems? All right. This ability to bring your mindset to look at problems collectively, not just individually, but collectively. But it might be an individual's skill that you just described there is really good at something, so the team lets that person become the tip of the spear and then bring it back to the team. The important thing is it comes back into the team. Then how can you execute? How can you take risks? When you take these just core components together, and then you also map in data literacy points, you start to see that you can begin to measure. Now, the best way to get these measurements owned by the team is you get them to define it. So that you've not only got the variables, but you've got from worst in class to best in class. They work on that. They own it. They're able then to bring the strengths and weaknesses of each team player in whatever activity they're doing to come through. And we've done this hundreds of times. So giving them a template, giving them a tool that gives them something they can start to read the soft skills domain much more easily, then it lifts them up to be able to answer those questions, Jez.
I think a lot of it's in the feedback. I
Just-
think the feedback is the most important part from multiple sources.
So me and Phil have obviously been working very heavily on the scoring framework for the data literacy game as we transition into this, using the game as a tool for this. And there's two parts to that. One is that what those skills were and how do we define each one and how do we show progress in them, I think is like you said, you can, as an individual and as a team, start to do things more often. If I take we talked about curiosity earlier, and also around storytelling, there's a part in the game, and I won't give too much around, there's a part in the game where one of the individuals is receiving information and seeing changes in their environment while they're separated from the rest of the team. And the amount of times we played this game, and the few times, every time me and Phil come back and said that person once didn't communicate that they were experiencing something completely different to what everyone else was. And even when some of them tried to tell their story, tell them they've received this additional data information, the rest of the team was so focused on their own tasks, they thought it irrelevant and didn't pay attention to it. So but it was a piece of information that could help that team get through the next challenge, as it were. So it's about these. We've had to think carefully about the gameplay and the scoring framework to say, what are we actually scoring, and in which examples do they link to in the game that you can pull through. But what that's got us to a point of saying is that the game is just a fun, interactive tool to drive coaching, feedback, and self-awareness on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And the minute you change, it's interesting Toby used the word variables, because the minute you change one of those variables, it changes your way of working, it changes your scoring, right? And we have this in I can't remember the theory now, but essentially when teams form, forming, storming, norming, etc. The minute you change a dynamic of the team or someone in the team, all of those variables change. So your scoring or the way your team work all of a sudden is reshifted, and your soft skills change and your curiosity changes, and you have to work out again, how do I ask the right questions when this new senior leaders come on board.
But some of these things, so I really like the sound of all of that, right? But I always look back to let's just take the special forces, for example, and Toby will know a lot about this, obviously, but it doesn't matter what situation you were to put a crack team in to go and do something, there will be fundamentals that they will lock into place immediately. And with teams in businesses, I see that fundamentals aren't even there, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. Did they put a communication channel in place where they innovated about, bits and pieces? Did they assign someone who's a specialist in that? Some of those are what I call the real fundamentals, which I think this game will help get started straight away. And my view is that the special forces didn't get to where they were without tons and tons and tons and tons of practice. They've done it in live environment time and time again, to the point where they know exactly what they're going to do the minute something happens. And I think that, like with the game like this, it will do all of that. It will get teams to a place where they've got fundamental way of working, which I think is awesome, because it's like the foundations of a house. And then, like you say, Nick, when you change the variables of the game, that's okay, because the fundamentals will always see them through. But then they might have to change a few fringe parts just to get the finesse of the objective completed. And I love all of that. But it's those big bits at the bottom.
No, but you're bang on right there. Talk about fundamentals. I mean, we've been doing this for years and years. We've done hundreds of teams. We've never met one team that's come on from a business team that's got the fundamentals. Just not one. And not even an esports team who should have the fundamentals to come in.
But it's interesting just to kind of build on that point, that we're all moving now very much in our business into agile delivery. Mm-hmm. And often what you find there is you get agile teams. Well, they're not a team. They're an agile grouping of individuals that will be kind of thrown together. Yeah. So you'll have the SME, you'll have the developer, you have the project manager, you maybe have an architect, whatever it may well be, someone doing UX, all of this sort of stuff. And actually, they've all got good skills, but no one's ever. Where it goes wrong is because they don't work very well as a team. And we all know that this is what our lived experience is. You spend half your time as a leader trying to, well, what the bloody hell's going on here? It's like, well, he doesn't answer his phone, he doesn't do this. We're all storing it properly in here, Phil. We're doing our epics properly, Phil, but they're not doing theirs properly. And and all of this conversation, you just think this is just the basics. But we expect teams, individuals to be thrown together and somehow know how to operate and communicate successfully in that team environment without any training.
But it's interesting.
You would never do that in a sports environment, would you? Or the
no, but it's what Jez said.
Just like get on with it.
But Jez said the key thing: there's protocols. If you take somebody from a special forces in the UK and you put them with a US special forces team, they know what to do because they've trained the protocols. The protocols don't make them stupid, though. Just because there's a set of protocols means it's their team radar for how do they solve problems. But we don't have a team radar because really a business team is an oxymoron. and I think the way, Jez, the way that you pitched that is better than the way I pitched it, because it's right to the heart of the problem. The game in itself is a process of looking in a mirror, because you can't hide. And you can hide in a role play game in a room. You cannot hide. And that's scary. That is scary for senior executives or whatever rank you are. But once you get through that, with the best thing a coach can do is to bring out the confidence in people. The job of the coach is not to answer the questions. The job of the coach is to get the team to find the answers to the questions. All right, that's the job. And the job of the coach is not to take the pain away from the team doing that, because it's that pain of not understanding, of going through silences, of going through difficulty, gives you the leap in learning, gives you the leap in performance, gives you the leap in confidence. I mean, we experienced it with your team, Jez and Nick, when some of the people came on board and they were a little bit frightened about playing, a little bit concerned there's a game. By the end of it, they're an ambassador for it. So they're off selling it and selling the virtues of it. Like, we need to just stand back. If you can set people on fire like that about a product, then you just need to get out of the way and just give them more runway.
I just think it's like you've just said there about looking in the mirror. I mean, I couldn't believe how crap I was when I went on to like,
all of us,
no idea what I'm supposed to do.
The funny thing is, and again, thinking about those data skills and that framework, and how do we use this to progress data literacy and fundamentals in the organization, right? From the other side of the fence, me and Phil played it a number of times, and we sat watching, what's happening as coaches. And the very first bit, how well did people communicate their information they've received, right? The game has been specifically designed to give people different information, to give people different roles and different responsibilities and different skills, and actually designed to send them off on singular paths and combined paths that mean you are multitasking. For me, I can always see the relation to a normal business where I've been in projects, we've asked someone to go off and do something. We might get a few DevOps tickets updates to say that there's they're progressing whatever percent they think they're going to make up in their head of that day, because no one really knows what percentage of a DevOps ticket is actually completed or not. And then they'll get to a blocker, and they might share they've got that blocker, or they might not even say anything until the next stand-up or whatever it may be. But because they're off on their own doing one thing and the rest of the team are doing something else, they don't share the data and information they've got, And so I think it's about putting people in and Toby, you said this in a previous podcast, a testing environment, an environment where it does not matter if you fail. It's not an environment you fully understand, because it's a make-believe bank heist or whatever whatever challenges the game's thrown at you at that time. But it's this make-believe environment that's testing, and really what you're doing is looking at what am I doing, what questions am I asking, how am I thinking about information and new things I'm doing, how am I thinking about my situation, and then how do I apply that to real life. And the one that Phil and I spoke quite a bit about was data ethics and privacy as a skill, right? So yes, there are legal and really compliant people that will understand and know the laws inside out and be able to guide and drive businesses. But as AI starts coming more and more into organizations, as the boards are asking for it, even if it may not be ready yet, each individual person in the business needs to have these kind of basic questions where every time they're faced with this kind of, we could use AI for that, to consider, should I be using this data? Should we be using it for this purpose? And what impact could it have on other events? A really good example of this is we done a bit of a return to work tracking analytics. So it looked at when people came back to the office, did they tag into the office or not? And the team wanted quite granular level data, and we had to kind of say, well, we can't give you like job titles and locations, because there could be one person with that job title in that particular location, and therefore it becomes identifiable. And what if Bob over in Team A wanted to use it to make sure they only came in with their friends in? It's going to change and address the thing of the other impacts of how that data could be used. And if we can get people asking these questions in an environment that's kind of risk-free, that to me is how we start to move the needle on some of these data skills.
And that is why I really struggle with this type data literacy, because data literacy covers a multitude of kind of response actions and responsibilities with data. So it's like one of the things, like, do we have within the industry a standard term of what we're covering, you know, within data literacy? Because sharing of data and the ethics around that is hugely important. And in a day, and the majority of sort of serious data breaches that I've been involved in aren't because there's been some sophisticated hacking going on. It's because someone shared something on a link or sent something over on a pen drive or whatever they've done that they shouldn't have done. And you know, and then businesses go into crisis mode, and it's all of this, that, and the other. You know, but you know, the solution, and I'm always saying this, is train people in understanding data. And literacy and their responsibility and their accountability. They don't really understand, you know, no one's actually explained them to them. They bloody well know after they've got it wrong. But it's a little bit late then.
I like this about the game, though. Actually, you know, when I look at data literacy, and whatever sits with underneath it, policy, privacy, protection, ethics, governance, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I like the fact that in the game, I see elements of all of that going on. Someone's got access to a certain amount of data. There are specific policies in place, like some of the data is private to one than it is to the other. So there's actually elements of all of that going on straight away. And then it's the soft skills that you need to obviously interrogate and work out what is actually happening, where everybody misses it straight away. So I think that's why I think the game is really, really good, because it's probably doing a lot more than what we think it is. And I think that will come out as we start to see progress of how teams are doing over, you know, Q1, Q2, whatever it might be, to see how they're actually, you know, approaching the situation, and what kinds of, I'd be really interested to see the data from, let's just say, a team that starts using the game in month 1 and they play the game 4 times, right? What questions we capture all the questions they're asking versus what questions are they asking in Q4 when they've played the game 20, 30 times.
Yeah.
I bet you those questions are far more intelligent at the end of it than they would be at the beginning. And that's when I can think that's probably one way of measuring whether a team or people are improving.
And I think with the Jez, I think on the gameplay as well, what's really good is that you can bring it back to, so what's your business context around this? Yeah. So you can always bring it back to being relevant, because knowledge, I think the important thing is knowledge within context, isn't it?
Yeah,
and that's what the game allows you to do. It's like, it's okay to know that I shouldn't be sharing GDPR relevant data.
Yeah.
But actually, when you see it in a role playing context, you start to understand, well, yeah, the reason why the security levels are in place or policies is to stop people from sending the wrong things over, you know. So that, you know, well, I haven't realised that before. Putting the two things in, but I've never actually read the bloody policy. I've just been told.
No, but I think there's a thing that's quite interesting, and where you know, there's a crossroads of change taking place in organizational structures. So there's a movement from vertically designed organizations where decision making comes from the top down, and where really people at the bottom are not that well trusted, which is what you just described, because people make mistakes, so they're not educated, to what we're calling horizontal organizations, right, where decision making is through teams. And so I think that's something that what you're describing there is they're going to have to learn to trust and to educate. But I'd like to sort of bring it to a close now. I think it's been a really, really fruitful discussion. I think it's one that sets the mark of what we can do as a partnership into the future. Like that, I think it's the first time ever that a multiplayer video game has been brought together with a partnership with a data company. It's exciting as yours, Jez and Nick. And I'm afraid to end the thing, but in terms of just closing remarks, do you guys want to say anything before my producer writes me another note and says that we're hitting the? I think that was him flashing on and off earlier on, saying we should be like.
Well, I honestly think like we could chat about this all day.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we really could, and there's so many things to explore. But I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's got my brain going a little bit, and I've had a few thoughts about how it can be applied, and got me a bit more excited, even more excited than I'm already about the impact and the value that it can have moving forward. So it's just it's brilliant to be motivated. But really good points today. Thanks a lot, guys.
Nick.
Yeah, just I'm really excited by this partnership. We've been talking for a long time and working on the framework of how this kind of applies and how will it teach the skills that we need from a data perspective. I think if you're even taking that aside, you know, we're looking at an immersive, fun, interactive way to re-engage team and bring what Jez said back. It's about engagement and empowerment. And I think if we can do those two things, the rest can come quite easily and quickly. So really excited for the launch.
And Phil?
I've been kind of working on this sort of motto that I'm trying to live my life by, but also my business. If you want to be different, you've got to do different. And
Absolutely.
this is kind of really our partnership encapsulates that. I think you can't just be a passive observer to what's going on and the changes that are happening rapidly in society and business and in organizations. You've got to be doing it. And I think this is what innovation looks like. And then my ending note would be for all of those millions that are watching this, can you like it? Can you subscribe it? Or the 1 or 2 that are watching it,
share
can
it?
you like it? Can
Press
you
the bell up here.
Go down there or
Right,
there.
link below.
It changes, doesn't it?
There'll be a link
look,
on this
just
side.
get in touch. Let's play the game, and let's talk about how we can help. Right.
And all the details of Eden Smith will be down in the show more in the details and the various things, and of course it goes across all of the podcast channels. So I'd like to say thank you very much, team. Goodbye. See you on the next one.
Have a good day.
See you soon.
Bye bye.